Welcome to the Can You Even podcast, a space where real life stories prove that no matter what life throws your way, you can. I'm your host, Candisse McCormick, and as someone living with spinal muscular atrophy, I've faced my own share of challenges, but I've learned that with the right mindset, anything is possible. On this podcast, I have the privilege of sharing stories from incredible people who have faced life's twists and turns, overcome challenges, and found their own version of you can. These conversations are all about finding strength, hope, and purpose, even in the hardest moments. So get comfy, turn up the volume, and get ready, because these stories might just shift your perspective in a way you never saw coming. Okay, we are live with the very first Can You Even podcast. I found the record button. We're hitting the record. We're doing the dang thing, whether it's perfect or not. And so I'm so excited to introduce my very first guest, Dayle Sheehan. So thank you for coming on my podcast today.
Thank you for having me.
I'm just going to let you give yourself a little bit of an intro because this is a super chill, relaxed, and I feel like nobody introduces ourselves better than ourselves. So I'll leave it over to you.
I am Dayle Sheehan-Britton. I am an interior designer. That's the career that I've sort of had the longest. I've been doing that for over 20 years. I'm also a website designer, which is sort of a strange combination, but essentially I love to design anything, and one seamlessly led to the other. I also have a co-host a podcast, a top-rated podcast on Apple with my sister called Proof It's Possible, and I am a best-selling author. And my sister and I have also founded something called the Ultimate Girls Trip, which is a business mastermind for entrepreneurial women to help them level up and find the right community of people. Because I'm a huge believer that people and who you're surrounded by, it dictates your outcomes and what you can achieve. So
Absolutely.
that's me on like a professional level. On a personal level, I am a full-time wheelchair user. I have been in a wheelchair since I was 16. I am now 42. And I am somebody that has really not allowed that to be my excuse or the thing that holds me back from doing all the things that I mentioned.
Yeah. I feel like I couldn't have asked for a better guest to kick this off because just in that, couple seconds of introduction and all the things that you do, you definitely have that you can attitude. And I know that when you come up with something and put your mind to it, you always achieve it. So I'm just really excited to dive into all that. So you mentioned that you are a wheelchair user. Can
Yes.
you share a little bit about that story, how you became a wheelchair user, that kind of thing?
Yeah, so I've been in a wheelchair since I was 16, and it basically happened overnight. So I have a very rare neuromuscular disease that nobody else in Canada has that they know of. So what happened was it kind of let me fall through the cracks. I didn't belong to Cerebral Palsy Association, and no doctor there understood me, and I didn't belong directly under muscular dystrophy, even though muscular dystrophy I would say is the closest aligned, and the doctors always kind of said that to what I have. So even to this day, I don't have a very clear or clean diagnosis, and we still don't know what my progression looks like. But what happened is I had a young doctor who was very inexperienced, and what he decided to do was he suggested that I have a surgery that would help me start walking regularly. So the way that I was walking was to walk on my toes because my gait and like through my core was starting to get weaker and weaker, and my disease is progressive. So what happened was I had the same surgery when I was 6 years old from walking on my toes. They wanted me flat foot.
Right.
And when I was 6, I recovered no problem. When I was 16, I was off my feet for way longer than they were expecting. And then after that, while I was off my feet recovering, I lost way too much muscle because if I don't use my muscles, I lose them. So from there, I moved, my mom and dad like found me care and moved me into a hospital in Edmonton, which we lived in Calgary. So that was a 3-hour drive for them because that it was the only place that I could get 3 a day, like physiotherapy, and do all the treatments I needed and get into the pool. And even going to that degree of trying our hardest and making sure we took our shot at getting my ability to walk back, it wasn't possible. Like the physiotherapist is like, we've exhausted every option. I'm so sorry. She was almost sadder than I was because I don't think at the time as a 16-year-old I could imagine the
Right.
challenges ahead. And like I still had the comfort and safety net of my parents. So if they were okay, saying I was okay, I felt like I was okay, kind of a thing.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think like that's something that's very always has been interesting to me because so myself, I was born with a disease called spinal muscular atrophy, and I actually never walked. And so for me, it's something that like my wheelchair is just very normal to me. I've had
Right.
since I was 3 years
Only
old,
life you know.
the only life I know. And
Yeah.
like I knew I was different, but I was like, this is just how I do life. And
Mhm.
so I feel like I could never actually imagine, especially being 16 years old, where your life is kind of just in the thick of like teenage years and becoming an adult soon and all the social lives and that
Yeah.
kind of thing. I couldn't imagine having something that I was so used to change and be taken away that so drastically. So I guess like my question would be like in doing that, what would you say was like your biggest challenge and how did you find your way through that big change?
Yeah. Well, I didn't know what to name it at the time,
Mhm.
but losing the ability to walk is a huge loss. But I
Mhm.
didn't see it like that in the moment. So I just was muddling through all of the emotions and the hard stuff and trying to figure out like what is next for me? What am I capable of? What kind of job will I have? Will I ever get to fall in love? Will I ever get to get married? Will I have kids? Will I, even be able
All
to
the
keep the
things.
job, right? Like, how will I
Yeah.
get into the job? Because at this point, I didn't have a vehicle that worked for me. I didn't have a home
Right.
that worked for me. Like, I had a lot of things to manage. And like I said, my parents filled in the gaps for me a little bit because when you're a kid, still you're under their roof. It's like, mom and dad, what are we going to do about our house? They
Yeah.
fill in for you. And I always say like one of my greatest things is that I got to be with my parents longer because I stuck with them because I was like, well, I know I'm 18, but I'm not leaving, the world.
Totally.
I mean, I went to college. I went away to college, but as soon as I was done college, I went straight back to my parents' house. I didn't look for an apartment. I didn't look for to go be independent. I did not feel ready for that. So there was just, and I wouldn't say that I like had this where I was like, okay, this is the lesson in all of this. I'm 17 now. I get it. It took 15 years, 10
Yeah.
years for me to like start being like, okay, I've gotta, and I was always positive throughout it. And when I wrote my book and told my story, a lot of people said to me, I didn't know you were so sad. And I said, either
Right.
did I. Either did I. I didn't realize I was so sad either. But when you go back over something that was hard, I'm cut from the cloth that I can make the best out of anything. I always say, like, one of my luckiest things is that I was born with a happy heart and I can reframe almost any situation to be good. But I had the support of my family, so that was made it easier for me. It was an extremely challenging age because I cared about being popular, I cared about being cool, I cared about parties. I did
Totally.
not want to leave my life and start worrying about what kind of bath seat I needed or how I was going to get from the basement to the main floor and like how exhausted I would be before school because we didn't have a stair lift yet. So I was like crawling up the stairs to try and get to the top of the stairs and then going to school all day, and it was just like a lot of change really, really fast. So
Right.
the grief, like I realized the word is grief and the
Mhm.
grief that you have to go through. And my situation happens to be because I was in a wheelchair suddenly. Somebody else's situation could be the loss of a loved one, it could be the loss of a dream that you had. Grief comes and goes. It's not just for somebody that has a has someone pass away. And that's kind of what we've like reserved it for. Um,
Totally.
so, and it's interesting because in my interior design career, I often end up with clients that their mobility has changed, whether they're a child and it's the parents that's sort of
Okay.
the client, or they're they've gotten an MS diagnosis and they're in their 30s or 40s or 50s, and now their ability is going to change. And so the positive like mindset that I have is that thank God it happened when I was 16 because I was still in the comforts of my parents' house. I
Yeah.
hadn't actually done adult life yet and got this whole routine as an adult that was taken away from me. So there was some good in that really hard time, if that makes
Totally.
sense. Because
No,
I watch people that are like 40 or 50 years old and they're just devastated by the fact that they're now needing a walker or needing a wheelchair or needing crutches. And I think to myself, like, it must be harder because you're having more taken away from you,
yeah.
you know? But then someone will say to me, no, you got more years taken away from you of walking and being able. So maybe it's harder for you and you just have a better mindset. And so it's like, it's
Yeah.
all that based.
Well, and I think, like, that's the thing. I think in both aspects, both things are true. I think that, again, I never walked, so I didn't ever feel like I had that grief of loss.
Right.
Um, and I feel like I was born with this "you can" attitude. I do thank my parents for it, but growing up, I would be like, "Oh, can I go do this?" And my parents would be like, "I don't know, go figure it out." So,
Right.
like, whether you did it or you didn't, I had that choice, and I've just always chose to always give it my best shot, try it even if it was scary. Um, and we did. Me and my cousins and my brother, we would just figure it out and whatnot. And so I think like that, but again, I do think it comes down to that mindset of just being able to focus or find the good. Because I always say to people, like, you can choose your hard,
Yeah,
right? You can choose to decide today is going to be a hard day, or you can choose to find ways that make it good and easier. And if that means you just have to have a slower day, that's okay too. So,
for sure.
um, yeah. So I think one of my questions here that I have is, what do you think one thing that you've learned about yourself through your whole experience of losing your ability to walk and becoming as successful as you are
Mm.
now today?
I so when I first was in a wheelchair, I really had this like looming feeling that like a whole bunch of things that I really wanted to have happen in my life were not possible for me.
Right.
And the day that I decided I can't just sit in that, I'm not accepting that. I'm going to just poke my head out of this like scary little hole and decide, you know what, let's start with trying to have the job that I'd actually want, not the job that I could do, not the job because it's
Mhm.
at a desk, because being an interior designer wasn't a good choice, really. Like
Mhm.
before there was technology and FaceTime and
Right.
quick texting a picture, all of that, like that, I've been a designer long before that. So
Right.
I needed to go into people's homes and nobody's house is wheelchair accessible unless they've made it so. And
Right.
usually they're hiring me to make it that way.
Yes.
So I'm like, it was a hard choice. Like it was a weird and hard choice, but I knew I really wanted it. So I did what I could. And like I would have like my mom or an assistant like go in and take pictures of the house and I would use measurements and I just did what I could to do the job that I wanted. And what that did was it built self-trust.
Mm.
So when you try something and you can do it, you figured out how to navigate a hard thing, it makes you think, okay, well, what else could I do? And then
Yes.
the next thing is, I wanted to have a boyfriend. I wanted to date somebody. So I was like, this one's really scary because if you get rejected in this way, it doesn't just hurt. Like if I would have found out that I couldn't do the exact job that I wanted, I would have
Right.
been like, okay, well, what are some other jobs? Like it doesn't
Yeah.
hurt your heart in the same way. It feels frustrating, it feels
Yeah.
annoying, whatever. But this is like tied to maybe your self-worth or like as dating is for everybody, not just a
Yes.
person in a wheelchair. Dating is hard on the heart if you don't date the right people. So I like thought, okay, I'm going to try that next. So I tried that and it wasn't a bad experience. And I'm like, okay. So, and like, it wasn't that I found the right guy on the first try. I
Right.
dated a few different guys over a few different years and, was like, you're really good in these ways, but you're not at all what I'm looking for like the person that's going to be my person. I need a lot of like love, no selfishness, lots of
Right.
like I do need more help. I do need more everything. Like they say the 5 love languages or whatever. Everybody has one and I'm like, "No, I have 5. I
Yeah.
need them all."
Yeah.
And So I'm like, I expect them all. I don't know why, my parents
Yeah.
love me very well. I don't want to like give up just because I need acts of service more than I need presents doesn't mean I never want to get a present again. Like I don't
Right.
believe in that. So I like think it's a great way to like identify what you care the most about, but I think that we all deserve all of them.
Yeah.
So, it helped me like fine tune and get self-trust about that. So it's that I am capable of absolutely anything that I want.
Yeah.
I just have to go after what that is. And every single time I do something that's scary to me, and whether I fail or I succeed, I prove that I can do it. I can prove that I can try. And not everything in this life goes your way, but you know, why not? Keep trying till it does.
Well, and I always say to people, like, I think you and I are on the same mindset of like the universe speaks to us. Like we believe in like manifesting our goals and our dreams. And I think to myself lots of times, maybe it didn't work out because it wasn't supposed to. It's
Exactly.
just not
It
where you're
wasn't
supposed to be.
for
And it
sure.
had nothing to do with the hard time you're in or the situation, or for you and I not to do with our disability. It's because we weren't supposed to be there. So
Right.
just move on to the next thing so you can find the thing that you're meant to be doing. So
Well, and I also say like everyone can see my challenge.
yeah.
My challenge, like I always say, this bitch follows me around. And I'm talking about my wheelchair because you can
Yeah.
see it. Whereas anyone else, they have the same self-doubt, challenges, failures, things that have made them go, I gotta quit. I shouldn't carry on. This isn't for me. This isn't, whatever. But the fact of it is that we just can't see your challenges as
Yeah.
well because they're inside. They're your feelings were hurt. They're trauma. They're, these little things that come along in your life that make you doubt yourself or make you feel like you're not good enough, whether it was the way
Yeah.
you were raised or the conversations you had with loved ones that, or whomever, right?
Right.
Um, and my biggest challenge is out in the open for people to see. So
Mhm.
people give me a lot of grace around it and a lot of like care and consideration. And so how lucky am I that I get to see the best in people because they do they can see that like some things in my life are harder than others. So they rush to help me and that is like such a blessing to me that I'm like I think to myself all the time like you're very lucky. You're very it's
Yeah.
and like that I've said that to the odd person and they're like, "You though, you're not actually that lucky." Like even when my doctor said, he's like, "Listen, I'm just gonna tell you, you didn't win like the genetics lottery."
Yeah.
And I was like, I burst out laughing. And I'm like, I bet you there'd be somebody that would be so hurt and offended by that. But I already know that. I already know that in an ideal world, you'd you wouldn't just walk, you'd run. You wouldn't, you'd work out hard. You'd do all the things that physical things like in an ideal world, I would love to be able to be physically able, but I'm
Yeah.
not. And that's okay. And that's my thing. That's my hard thing.
Yeah.
And we
Yeah.
all have a hard thing.
Definitely. We definitely all have a hard thing. And I think too, like, I think anybody could adapt to the mindset of like, it really does come down to our mind. You and I could sit at home and say, like, our life is too hard and it's too hard to get out of bed and it's too hard to get places and whatnot. But I think like both of us have grown up and lived our life in a way where we're like, you just figure out how to like leave a little bit early or ask for help and those kind of things. And there's no shame in that. Like that's just who we
Mhm.
are. And people that are in our lives don't like that, then they probably don't stick around too long. But
Exactly.
that's okay too. And I always like I tell this story about how when I was graduating, or after I graduated, I should say, and it was our 10-year high school reunion. And I was an event planner, so I was like, okay, I'll plan our 10-year reunion. So one of the guys that I went to school with runs into another guy that we went to school with, and he's like, hey, are you coming to the reunion? The guy said, no, I haven't heard anything about it. And he says, oh, well, Candace is planning it. I had a graduating class that miraculously had 5 Candaces in it. So
Oh,
in this process of him trying to tell the other guy which Candace I am because he didn't remember my last name and whatnot, he tells him like basically my life story. I used to live in a small town. This is what my dad did. told all these very generic factors that would
Right.
distinguish who I am. And the guy can't place it. And so then he's telling me this story later. He's like, yeah, it took me like 10 minutes for him to figure out who you were. Like, how could he not remember you? And I looked at him and I was like, why didn't you just tell him the Countess in the wheelchair?
Yeah.
And he literally looked at me and was like, oh, because that's not how I see you.
Right.
And I'm like, that is, and I feel like I have lived my life like that. I have just been like, yeah, I'm in a wheelchair, and I like, not to sound like delusional, but like, I don't, there's even days where I go places and I'm like, oh, I didn't phone to make sure that I could get into this
Oh
place.
yeah.
I forget to do it sometimes. And so
Yeah.
I think when people can adopt those mindsets of like, yes, this is hard, but you can choose to just push through it or ask for help because there are people in the world that will help you to do it. Or, like I said before, maybe it's just not the path. If you feel like you're running into the barriers, it might be a sign and you should find something even better that you can put your energy into.
Well, that and the other thing is if you go into the world and you're like, everyone's judging me, everyone thinks that I'm different, everyone thinks that I'm, need their help and they're pitying me. Everyone,
Right.
that's a made up story. It's not true.
Right.
B, it is a story that is it's a story that is completely self-sabotaging. Like it's one of those things that you don't realize that you're putting the vibe out that if you say no one's going to like me, well, you're going to show up there differently than if you said to yourself, everywhere I go, everybody loves me.
Right.
And when you say everybody loves me, they do. And when
Right.
you say everybody doesn't like me, they don't, because you showed up differently. You
Yes.
showed up with a bad attitude. You showed up quiet. You showed up where you didn't talk to anybody. You didn't ask them a question. You felt intimidated. Whatever it was based in, you created it because your
Right.
mind is very powerful. And so that's the part that I also think you have to be so mindful of what you think and what
Right.
you put out into the world, because it will come back to you and you'll that's what your reality will be. Like I always say, like when I go into the world and I'm being like snarky or cranky or whatever, I'm
Yeah.
like, God, that lady wasn't being very nice. And I'm like, either was I. Either
Yeah.
was I. Like I started this whole day being a snoot. Like I was snooting people, So when I got snooted at back, that's why.
Yeah. Well,
So
and I think you talk a lot about this too in your book, about like the yeah, but
yes.
yeah, but everybody's gonna think I'm weird, or yeah, but that's not gonna be easy. Um, Talk a little bit how you came up with the yeah buts and that
Yeah.
whole
So when I
yeah.
was first in a wheelchair, I literally would be like, I think I want to go to college because all my friends were going to college and I didn't want to be left behind. And I just
Really?
always thought I would go to college. It was something that was really important to me. And then I immediately, all the doubt jumped in. And it was like, yeah, but you won't be able to get around campus because you're all over week and you're not going to be able to push yourself. Yeah, but where will you live? Yeah, but who will help you? Yeah, but how will you have an income while you go to school to be able to pay for your bills? Everything. I mean, it didn't matter what I wanted to do. I had this big long list of yeah buts. And so they were
Mhm.
all my self-doubt, they were all my limiting beliefs, they were all the things that could have held me back. And so that's where like the going off to college was kind of my first big one because it was the
Right.
soonest decision I made after being in a wheelchair, and it was the one that like had the most risk. So I thought, okay, I don't even care what I go to college for at this point. If it has a campus that's like within one building, that would work. That was kind of like the way that I broke it down. Then I'm like, okay, where is somewhere that's close enough to me that my parents could like rescue me in an emergency, but they're far enough away that I won't just go to like hang out with my high school friends and lean on all of the things and people that I would and not have to put myself out there because I did want to make new friends. I did want to have a college experience. So I realized like Red Deer College was about 2 hours from my home. My
Right.
dad, one of the staff for my dad's business lived there. So that was like a perfect safety net. I also lived there when I was a little girl. So I was a little bit familiar
Okay.
with it. And I kept one of my very good friends from when I was little. So I was like, if at least she's somebody I could call and say, do you want to go for supper? Do you want to go grocery shopping with me? Like, do you want to hang out? Come to my house, have a coffee, whatever. I thought like, at least you're not starting from nothing. So that felt like a little safety net that I needed to like break down one yeah, but finding a campus within one building, one breakdown, one yeah, but then the next thing was, well, where will you live? Well, the campus at Red Deer College, this is probably like what sealed the deal, was that the wheelchair accessible dorms was inside the school. I did not have to leave. There was like a big long tunnel hallway thing that got me to the school, and that was perfect. And then so from there, I went and found like a power wheelchair. Even though I didn't need a power wheelchair in my regular life, I got a power wheelchair for college because it was too big of a campus. So I literally ticked off every yeah, but, and next thing you know, I was enrolled in a program that like I had almost no interest in, but I didn't care. And I had 3 amazing years at Red Deer College, and I made all the friends, and I did all the fun stuff, and I drank 3 nights a week or 5 nights a week some weeks, like,
freshman 16 and all that.
Yeah, all the college things that you do that are fun. And I reconnected with the girls that I like went to elementary school with, and became friends with them again. I made all new friends at school in my courses. I made lifelong friends out of it. So I literally, after that, I was like, okay, these yeah buts, you got to keep an eye on them because they're lies. They're just limiting beliefs. And everybody can make up a yeah but for anything that feels scary. And that's what I was doing.
100%. And I love that because I feel like no matter what situation we're in where we feel like, oh, this is going to be a little bit hard, I think it always boils down to just taking what task at hand and breaking it down into simpler, more manageable steps. So you were moving and you thought, oh, that's going to be really hard to find a place. You knew that you needed a place that was in one spot, right? And so you just find those things. And I think, again, it speaks to the mindset of when you know what you want and you set your mind up to find it, you will find it because it is out there.
Exactly.
So you just have to believe that we can. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
That's very interesting. I didn't realize that you used a power chair at university, college, whatever you want to call it. So yeah. Okay. Is there anything that was unexpected or surprising that has come through your whole experience of discovering that you can? This can be whether it's personal life, business life, whatever you want to relate it to.
It's not that it was surprising, but it is really helped me dial in what I care about in this life. So what I care about in this life is people. And it's because the only reason like I work super hard and want to have a successful business is because I want to have experiences with people that I love. So like there's people on that level. And then there's people on the level of like, it's amazing to me how selfless and amazing and kind and considerate people are, and all the wonderful things that people will do for someone else that I always am just in awe of, because I can't always help somebody the way that somebody helps me. So like my husband, for instance, it's not equal. My family, it's not equal. Like I can't make them a huge supper and like do all this nice stuff for them and fill in the gaps for my sister's busy life and go get her kids and do, because if I were able-bodied, I would do more things that were physical. And so the way that people like have poured into me and helped me accomplish all my goals and set me up for success and cheer me on, and and it's everything from like a stranger on the internet being like, I love your podcast, to or I read your book and it changed my life, or whatever people say, like just nice words, to like Darren, who lives in my house and does a million things a day for me, but it's amazing how people are all that matters, and that has helped me really know what my why is and like what my goals all are leading towards. Because like making money is fun, I love it. Making but nothing's as good as like making a memory with my sister's kids. Like that's what I really love.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk a little bit about your podcast. I think it's very similar. I think you and Jamie are a riot on there. It's so funny. I think your banter is great. Um, what kind of made you guys start that podcast? And
Well, yeah,
yeah,
we were writing books, and our girlfriend has a podcast company that edits podcasts, and she's like, you
right,
guys need a podcast to like talk more about your books and to get your messages out, and it's just like a great platform to build an audience and build a community.
right,
And we knew that in order to have successful books we would need to do that, so we're kind of like, no thanks, we're good. I don't want to do that. I don't like that at all, and I'm not interested, so no. And then what happened was, Jamie had like, it dawned on her, and she's like, I don't want to do it alone, and Dayle doesn't want to do it alone, but what if we did it together? What would that look like?
oh,
And the thing about us is we're always looking for opportunities to do stuff together. So
yeah,
'cause we love each other, we're best friends. So we're like, okay, well, this could be actually fun. So now it's super fun. And we've had we're so grateful because getting on Apple's top list was not something we even knew was possible. Like, I didn't know. I thought people that got on there were only celebrities. And
oh
so
no,
on our first week, our first podcast, we got to number 15 in our category. And like,
right,
that's where celebrities make it to.
yeah,
So I was like, no. And I will say that like made me think, okay, this is like something that a regular person, two girls from Canada, people that are just being authentic and vulnerable and bratty and having a good time, this is possible. Like, and our whole thing is called, our podcast is called Proof It's Possible,
mhm,
because both Jamie and I are like, we feel like, let's talk about the ways that you can break down your yeah buts, your limiting beliefs, to prove that things are possible, and talk about our own stories in business. And like, they're not always good stories. Like, sometimes they're like, so I hate my client and this is what happened. Like, they're the hard parts of business too, or the hard, it's all often all within ourselves, like the mindset trouble of being lonely in your business or whatever
yeah,
it looks like. So us getting to like share our conversations that we're having genuinely, I literally like keep an eye every week. What are we talking about each morning? Because her and I call
right,
each other in the mornings. And then that's where our podcast topic ideas come from,
yeah.
what we actually talk about.
Yeah, and it's great. I message you guys most times that I watch it, and I'm like,
Yeah,
"Wow,
we love it.
that was a game changer." Like, you drop some really good ways to shift mindset or just give a different perspective that even for me has been like when I'm having my own limiting beliefs and thinking like, "Oh,
Right.
I can't do this," or "Is this the right path?" or I don't know, like just doubt, doubt, doubt. And then I'll like watch and I'll be like, okay, I can do this. And we just got to get it together. And so yeah, I think like that's probably one of my tips for people when they're trying to adapt into this you can mindset. Find the things like podcasts and books and people and surround yourself with
For
them
sure.
and never be ashamed to like talk about the hard. Because when I feel like when we talk about the hard with people that are good, wholesome people, that's how we figure out the solutions and get into the you can mindset and live our best life.
Absolutely. Well, and the thing is like, there's no such thing as mastering it all. So
Right.
for me, like, I'm currently growing one of my businesses in a way that's scaring me,
Okay.
and I keep avoiding it. And I'm like, what's with this? Like, why won't you spend an hour doing the things that you know you need to do? Just do them. Like, you know better. You know that like action is required. So you can't
Right.
just think up the idea and then be like, in 2025, I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that. I need to act daily towards doing that. That's how something happens in the real world.
Right.
So, but I know it's my limiting beliefs. I know that it's something that's bigger and scarier, and I don't know all the answers to it yet. And I've ran my design business for over 20 years. I've had my website business for like 6 or 7 years. So I feel really comfortable there, and I feel like I know what I'm doing, and I feel confident, and I'm not on autopilot, but there's not a lot of days where I'm like, I don't know how to do what somebody needs. I know how to do what they need. I know how to get the website working the way that they need to.
Right.
So having to learn and grow always feels uncomfortable, no matter if you've learned and grown a million times before. It's never gets easier. You just get a little bit better at flexing the muscle and talking yourself through all the yeah buts quicker.
Absolutely. I'm literally in the thick of that. I feel like in the last couple of years I've done a lot of shifting, and
Mhm.
I'm living in that. Like I have some really big goals and things that I want to work to, and they're scary as hell. And I feel like I don't know what I'm doing, but I know that I can. I've done it before, and so I just have to dig back into that mindset and keep going
Mhm.
forward. So, um, was there anything that we didn't cover that you did want to make sure that you shared today?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, well that's good. Good for the first time we're doing this, so that's good. I where can people find you?
People can find me. So if you want to watch the podcast or buy our books, you can go to proofitspossible.com.
Mhm.
And we're also on Apple, Spotify, YouTube under Proof It's Possible
Yeah.
for the podcast and some links. And then I'm also on Instagram at Dayle_Sheehan_designs.
Awesome. Okay. So in closing, I have one last question. It's more fun. So if your story was a headline, what would it say?
Oh gosh, I don't
It'll
know.
trip you. This is a surprise question.
Yeah. I don't know. This is like not my expertise to write copy on a story here.
Mhm.
I don't know, Candice. You have to tell me. I don't.
Let me see if I could think of one really quickly. I should have done that prep work since I knew the question. I would say like yours would be something to do with like live life with a happy heart.
Yeah, I do. Honestly, like family and happiness are my two
Yeah.
guides in this life. So I care about both of those things. So all the things that I do in all the other areas of my life need
Yeah.
to lead me to that, both
Yeah.
of those. So
And I think like your happy heart, like it really, in all the times I've been around you and been in conversations with you and other people, I find like you always can flip almost, at least from my experience, any situation and find the positive in that.
I can. I really
Yeah.
can.
It's actually very phenomenal, and I'm always like, "Wow, that was good," and I think that that's just, like, a thing that we need more in this world, so, yeah, yeah, we'll work on your headline
Yeah,
for when you post this live
for
and,
sure.
post it there, but thank you for coming, thank you for sharing your story,
Thank
thank
you.
you for your "you can" attitude, and, I'll see you soon, I know I will, but
Yeah.
yeah, thanks for coming. Thanks for tuning in to the Can You Even podcast. I hope you're walking away feeling inspired, empowered, and ready to tackle your own You Can moments. If you loved this episode, be sure to follow, rate, and review the show. It helps me reach more people who need a little extra You Can energy in their lives. And hey, if you have a story to share, I'd love to hear it. Head to itsmecandice.com/podcast to apply to be a guest on the show. Until next time, remember, no matter what life throws your way, you can.